Thank you, Melissa, for taking your time. You are yet another person that I met who has Jeanne in common, Jeanne Demers, and we're here to talk about Jeanne. I want to first ask you, well, how did you meet Jeanne?
That's a really good question. I met Jeanne in a networking group, actually, that I was a pretty active member in. And even before I met Jeanne, one of the organizers of the group was mentioning how amazing her experience with Jeanne was. And she didn't even describe exactly what her experience with Jeanne was. And I knew from that description I had to meet her. And from there, that's how we met. I called her up and we had coffee and it was lovely.
Oh, what was your first impression?
My first impression of Jeanne.
Yeah.
She's effervescent in the most really wonderful way. She brings all of this positive energy to that experience. She was upbeat and enthusiastic, and also with this underlying calm that was just really wonderful.
Nice. And I think that is important for people who may see and hear this, because when we're talking about money, it's a personal thing. So you have to feel comfortable with the person you're going to be speaking with. So what were you expecting or hoping when you decided to either have a consultation or go ahead and start working with her?
So I didn't have a lot of expectations. I didn't really know very much about the modality she was using, although a few friends of mine have used it in the past. So when I started working with her, I felt like she just held a space in a way that nobody else I'd ever met had. What I mean by that is, like, she just kept this space for the two of us to talk about these kind of scary things. It always felt safe. It felt safe to tell her crazy things about my finances, which I would never disclose to anybody who I didn't know really well.
Yes.
I felt like, the information was safe and her feelings about it were safe. She never judged me. So when we first started working with this, I was worried, I had a lot of shame around my financial situation. And I was worried that working with it was going to feel like she was going to judge me. Yeah. She never, ever once did judge me. And it was pretty amazing. And I remember being kind of like, is this really going to work? I'm not so sure. I wasn't really 100% sure what was going to happen, even though I felt like I could really trust her.
Right.
I felt like, oh, well, we'll just see what happens. And then in the first conversation, I should actually backtrack and say, before we even sat down to the first conversation, because again, it was all about money back then. We were talking about, money and realize what matters, but the mattering part was all like integrated into money and thinking about money.
What was it like, though, as you were working together? Everyone's experience with her and with this sort of process is very personal. So without getting into anything that's too personal, what did you go through? What was your experience?
So, I was prepared to talk about my money because that's what we were talking about. And I was prepared to for the discomfort of talking about money because, most people don't feel very comfortable talking about money. What I hadn't anticipated, and I think was actually the much more beneficial, the much bigger deal of working with Jeanne, was how she was going to help me see the connections. She was going to show me how money was connected to all these other things that were happening, below the surface. Old programming from family and the experience of, carrying that stuff through, and whether you repeat that or you break from it and rebel against it, and getting a sense of freedom from that. So the first time we worked together, I didn't know any of that was going to happen. And as she started asking the questions of that first, it's kind of an interview where she asks you questions and you start disclosing all of this kind of fraught financial information. She just helped me realize those fraught moments were connected to the feelings that were underneath there. And it's so integral to what Jeanne does, taking the things that are on the surface and making them be, linking them to like the real causes of the struggle.
Isn't that true? Yeah. In retrospect, it seems so obvious, but it's like when you're in it, it doesn't, why would we ever think that? Because all we know is what we know, right? So we have our patterns and our things that we just kind of plop along life, and it's just what it is until somebody shines a light on it. And then suddenly it feels like, oh, of course, if I have issues in every part, like I can't be healthy in my whole life if I have really unhealthy issues that are unaddressed. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just to say, like, there's lots of ways you can shine a light on those things, and the way that Jeanne shows the light on them is so gentle and structured and shame-free. These are experiences that, bring up lots of feelings. So for me personally, it was a lot of shame around, all kinds of experiences, but particularly about, like not being a successful person at this point in my life, So she never once judged me ever in any of the work that we did. Never once did she, make me feel like these were all personal failings, or, these were things that were so deeply baked into who I was from the moment I was born, that until, like you said, she shines the light on it, it's just going to keep happening and happening and happening.
Yes. So now months have passed. Do you
Yeah,
still see or feel benefits from the work that you've done and the tools that you've acquired?
absolutely. And you can't unlearn or forget once those connections have been made.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to like look at a financial struggle, let's just use that as an example, but to look at a financial struggle and know, like, this is not some deep personal failing on my part, like
Yes.
this is the product of something else. And once you can identify that, like, you can break the cycle of it. So you can intercept that, thought, you can reframe, you can, take a more active approach, and, whatever the difficulty is.
Beautiful. You've described very well the initial vulnerability that you can feel going into this process. So for someone who is listening to you now, who says, I need help, I know that I have these issues, or I know I have issues, I don't know what they are, but I know I need help, and I am just nervous, anxious even, what would you say?
Yeah, so I would say, gosh, that's so really normal. It's we all feel that way, and do the deep breath or the whatever it is that helps you feel like focused and centered. And don't be afraid to reach out to Jeanne, because whatever it is you're experiencing right now, she's going to understand. She's seen it all before. You're not going to present her with something that she hasn't already experienced, maybe herself or seen in her clients.
Yes.
And she's going to hold a safe space for you, and she's not going to shame you. And the work that you do there, by reaching out to Jeanne, it's like the first step of breaking that cycle. And she's going to help you keep breaking it. So you're going to work with her in a way where you're going to be able to, you're gonna be able to get through these things. You're not going to be alone in that process.
Just right. Yeah, well said. Is there anything else that you want to add, or anything you want to say to Jeanne that I haven't covered?
Oh, well, Jeanne is just amazing. I mean, if you can't tell already from everything that I've said, she really is. She's a deep old soul who gets it, and not just gets it, but brings all of this positive energy and just safety to acknowledging your feelings. And she's just so good at that. She
Yes,
really.
she is. Well, I am glad that you've had success with her, and we're going to put your contact information in here, because what you do to help people build their business, I mean, together, once people get past those blocks, they still need to focus on their business, and you can help them with that. So we'll make sure that your contact information is there. But thank you for taking your time. I know Jeannie will mean so much to her.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for asking me to do this. I want to just say that the moment you mentioned Jeannie's name, I knew I absolutely had to be part of this.
Oh, wonderful. That'll make her feel great.